I am so excited to have Duke here to talk about how firms can tackle this huge and very common challenge that every single firm seems to encounter, which is hiring. Right? Hiring is tough. So many firms are struggling to find the right talent, to attract the right talent, to bring them in. So, we're going to talk about why that is and what firms can do about it. And plus, we've got a great little gift, let's say, for all Growthitects at the end of this. But before we dive into it, Duke, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tyler. So my name is Duke. I'm the founder of DukeTalent.io. It is a two-sided hiring platform for high-end design. So on one side, we have architects, interior designers looking for full-time placement, part-time projects. And then on the other side, we have companies and individuals looking to hire that type of talent. And you can kind of think of it as like a vetted LinkedIn for our industry. And it's an industry I've gotten to know over the years. Been doing it for almost 10 years. And yeah, almost a decade now. And, in the past year or so, we've really invested in the software, technology, platform side of it. So in doing that, we've been able to operate more efficiently, make better matches, and make matches just quicker. And in doing that, we've been able to lower our fee significantly and just service more studios. So yeah, the ultimate goal is to kind of solve this tricky, troublesome issue of hiring within this niche. And we're well on our way to doing that. And yeah, appreciate you taking the time. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm excited because I've told you this before, but like hiring is by far the most common challenge I hear from other firm owners all of the time. And for the last few years, I've been on the lookout for a recruiter that I feel like I can reliably trust to continue to send people to. And so when you and I connected, it was pretty immediate. I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is a very different recruiter conversation that I've ever had with anyone else. You've been in the industry for a long time. You work with a lot of amazing firms. And so it's great to have that background. And I'm curious now, after doing it for so long, right, for almost a decade, you said, why do you think that hiring is such a unique challenge for architecture firms?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first off, it's a very specialized and fragmented workforce. Specialized in terms of not only project type, but style. Like you have uptown firms with their bow ties, classical, traditional, Notre Dame, Miami type of studios. You have downtown firms wearing all black, doing sleek, modern condos, and firms in, Alabama and Portland, Oregon, all over the place. And every single one of these has a different ethos to their design, a different style, a different vibe. And essentially there's no way of sorting through that. So when a studio, needs to hire, normally it is an urgent need to hire. And if they post on either the AIA or ArcConnect or Business of Home, they'll receive applicants, but those applicants generally are not exactly a fit for what they're looking for. So that's where we come in and kind of make those matches. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of a LinkedIn matchmaking service where we can kind of go in and understand a studio and match them with a talent that kind of fits.
Why do you think that works better than just like posting to a job?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a little tricky on a job board. Job boards, especially in the age of AI and bots, anyone can easily apply to a job board. So I do a lot of posting on job boards myself over the past, 10 years or so, and it's it's a little bleak. So you'll receive 200 applications, but only 30 of them will be architects, and only 5 of those will be, you know, someone that does the project type that you do, and maybe one of them does the style that you do. So there's a big disconnect there. So you end up spending so much time sifting through just hundreds of resumes where they're, graphic designers or a software architect that just have an auto apply setup where it can just automatically apply to your role. So we see a lot of that frustration, and we wanted to build something that is a little bit more curated and vetted so that when a company is looking for talent, they receive applications and candidates that fits their needs and able to save them time so they can spend more time doing the actual designing.
Yeah. So it's lower volume, higher quality, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't.
Because the more volume that you get with hiring, I mean, you can be excited. You're like, oh, great, we've got 50 applicants that came through, but also that's 50 applicants that came through. You have to review and decide and qualify and do all of these different things for. So there's a lot of back end effort to hiring, especially when you mentioned at the beginning, like it tends to be very urgent, right? So it's kind of more of a reactive effort.
Yep, absolutely. And even with some of these other recruiting agencies, they'll post your job publicly, they'll receive 100 applications, and they'll send you 20 of them. And
Mm.
even 20 resumes that are somewhat relevant, even that takes a lot of time. So we are super hyper targeted in our outreach and the candidates in which we present, where it's only 5 people that might be super relevant, an absolute match in terms of project type, location, work from home policy, style, uh, program proficiency, all of these different data points. Each candidate should be a match to those. So it just saves a lot of time there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure there's a lot of gut checks that come in at this point when you've been doing it for almost a decade, in terms of your ability to kind of curate that talent like you're talking about and get a sense for the different types of firms that you're working with, because you kind of hilariously and accurately called out all of the architecture firm stereotypes a little while ago, which tend to be remarkably accurate. Like they're always kind of true. So
Yeah, it's making those
you've seen them all. Yeah. Well, I'd love to better understand, like, run through an example, kind of, right? So let's say that I am a firm owner, right? I have been, at least in the past, and I want to do a senior hire. What's the first thing that I should do if I'm not using something like Duke Talent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing you should do before you do anything is sort of a mindset understanding of like you should want the best talent. And I know that's really easy to say and probably makes a lot of sense and a common thought, but the thing is a lot of studios they will just post and just receive the first applicant and try to hire them. But you should really, just with anything, you get out what you put in. And it's one of those situations where you should be mindful, you should be strategic, there should be a cadence to your search, and you deserve the best talent. A studio is only as good as its team, and that team is worth investing in. So that's first and foremost, you should want the best talent and do the work in order to get that talent, because it's a two-way street. They are interviewing you, you're interviewing them. A studio needs to also pitch themselves to a candidate as much as a candidate needs to pitch themselves to the studio. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, you should probably understand who you need. Uh, Sometimes a studio is very specific. They say, I want a interior architect at $90,000 that has a foundation in architecture, but the sensibility and sort of taste making skills and taste of a designer. Like, okay, that's very specific. That's a unicorn candidate. We can go out and find you that. Other times it's, I want someone that went to Notre Dame, understands millwork, classical architecture, traditionally trained, and they can be from $60,000 to $150,000 across the entire experience level spectrum. They just need to have that skill set. So wherever you are in that spectrum, you should understand like, okay, this is who I'm going after. And one is not better than the other, but you should have some sort of target that you're going after. That'll kind of inform the strategy and the search. And then next, there's a lot of analogies to like selling your house. So in order to sell your house, you want structure to it. You want cadence. You want to be thoughtful, strategic, and you don't just on a whim decide I'm going to sell it and get the first offer and move on with life. Like no, it's a full process that you need to be present for. So in that, you kind of need to stage it. You need to get your website updated. You need to get your social media in order. Whether you have press links, get those on the website. Your policies in terms of work from home or your benefits or all of your admin, you need to get in order first and foremost, because if you post a job or go out and recruit someone and your website's down, they're not going to want to work there. So just first and foremost, get your things in order. One of your guests, I think, Studio Bucky, they did a they did a great job. That he launched his studio, and he had incredible branding and a website, and just he knew exactly his identity. He knew his angle, and I thought that was really impressive. Like they could attract talent, even though they were a brand new studio. They had a story. They had a beautiful website. They invested. They were thoughtful in that. And that's just a good example of like, okay, there's a story there that a candidate would want to, be a part of.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of like dress for the job that you want, right? Dress for
Exactly.
the candidate that you want to attract a little bit, right? You want
Exactly.
to present yourself in that way. And I love that. I love the mindset shift that you mentioned at the beginning, right? That you deserve, and you should want the best talent. It's very similar to this idea that, like, architects, that I'm always trying to tell architects, right, that they're extremely valuable. They're far more valuable than what they're charging for. All architects should be charging more, right? But it's the same thing. Like, you have to actually believe that, because if you don't, then you're kind of just doing an uphill battle the entire time to try to convince yourself, or maybe even question, right? You're in the middle of this constant imposter syndrome of whether or not you are deserving of the candidates that are coming in.
Exactly. And I see that with studios sometimes as well, where it'll be a small studio, maybe two or three people, maybe one person, and they're like, I can't compete with a Gensler, or I can't compete with one of these large studios in terms of salary or benefits or this or that. But in order to, every studio can have an angle, can have something that they offer, whether it is, you're part of the entire process, you're part of the creative process, your voice is heard, whether it's flexibility in schedule, work-life balance, like any studio, regardless of size, can offer candidates something. It's just a matter of finding that right one.
Yeah. And giving and making sure that that's known. I mean, I was just thinking, like, when you're reviewing, right, when you're looking and thinking about applying to a job, right, all of those details really do matter. The things that are in the job description, when you're looking through the benefits and seeing it. But, like, even silly things like, we have you can bring your dog into the office on Wednesdays or something, right? It's just like a small thing where you're like, oh, that's like, that gives me a reason to be excited to maybe see it. Like, getting the house in order, right? Sounds like what it's like. Like, we want to prepare. We want to make sure that we're prepared to present ourselves in the best way possible, so that we are attracting the right talent and the best talent for what we're looking for. So that's thing one. What's next after that?
Yeah, so now we have everything in order. Now it's time to go out and actually get candidates, and get talent in the door. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's two main ones. There's hunting and farming. So farming would be you post on the AIA or ArcConnect, Business of Home, Design Jobs, to one of these job boards, and it's a little bit of a passive but sometimes effective method of getting talent. The tricky part of that is you're only tapping into less than 20% of the talent pool. Not a fifth of the talent pool is actually regularly checking those job boards. So there is sometimes a little bit of luck that happens there, but if you really want to go out and find someone that is right for your studio, then you kind of do more of the hunting approach. And some of the best studios we work with are really good at this. This is what we really focus on, and all I've done in my whole career has been kind of the headhunting aspect of it. And yeah, kind of grew up, or my career has been in an interesting time in this. I went to school in Ohio, graduated, went to New York. I wanted to be a writer. It was 2016, and all of a sudden I ended up at a headhunting recruiting agency for designers. And it was
As
2000,
one does, naturally.
exactly. I wanted to be kind of a struggling writer, and I ended up doing recruitment, and here I am. But yeah, so then 2016, Microsoft had just bought LinkedIn and totally expanded their offering in terms of their LinkedIn Recruiter Seat, which is kind of the marquee product for any recruiter out there. And it's kind of a interesting inflection point where you had the old school recruiting methods of like a little black book of contacts, a binder full of resumes, a lot of cold calling, trying to understand a organization chart and get in touch with the right people in order to make those replacements, or placements rather. And then you also had this new age of software come in with LinkedIn and Microsoft, where all of a sudden you could get in touch with pretty much everyone and map out that industry intelligently. You could run email campaigns, get in touch with people. It was just more targeted of an outreach. In that, it was just an interesting time to kind of be a part of both. But like I said, if you want to go out and get talent, that's sort of a different game. Kind of on the most passive end, you have a simple LinkedIn connection request, maybe with a little note that says, hey, you align with what I'm looking for, would love to connect. On the other end, you have the cold call, actually calling a candidate and trying to pitch them on your opportunity. We do the whole spectrum and kind of everything in between. So if a company really wanted that type of talent, like, they can do that. There's no one stopping them from going out and getting someone that is a perfect match for what they're looking for. I think the main thing is there should be structure and cadence to your search. So it should be, I'm going to get my house in order. I'm going to launch my search. I'm going to do, post a job for 2 weeks, recruit for 2 weeks. And then after those 2 weeks, I'm going to assess and see what we have in terms of candidates. Instead of just, I'm going to post, forget about it. 3 months later, oh, we never filled that position. Like, there should be thought and strategy and structure that goes into the search process.
Yeah. It's funny because I think it's easy, maybe if you're a firm owner or a firm leader that's listening to this right now, and you're thinking about hiring, you're like, well, it's a heck of a lot easier for me to just post to a job board and wait for applications to come to me, right? But we talked earlier about what happens when you do that, right? You either get a slew of applications that gives you more admin time that you have to run through, or the applications that you're getting, they're just not very qualified. So it's actually, like, in total, it's still quite a bit of effort, because I'm trying to compare that to the hunting thing that you're talking about, which, if someone's listening to it, they're like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. Like, right, doing outreach, sending these messages. I guess I'm gonna start calling candidates now to see if I can, lure them over to our firm instead of some of the other ones. But it kind of balances out almost, I would say, to like maybe an equal time commitment, arguably, right? It's just one is maybe a little bit harder to do if you're doing the hunting, because it requires a different skill set.
Yeah, and if you don't have
Versus someone
time,
thinking like, I'm just going to fall back.
exactly. And if you don't have the time, you can work with us as well.
Yeah.
We do this professionally, so
Yeah.
that
Well,
is
that's what I mean. It's like, do you even have the time to review 50 applications either? I don't know. Like, that's after 3 years of talking to architects about the challenges that they have in their business, they don't seem to have time for much of anything. So I can't imagine that they would enjoy seeping through applications either, like a
exactly.
lot of them.
I know, and it's important. It is your team, and it's worth kind of investing that time and energy into, for sure.
Yeah. So after you start getting some of the candidates, right, whether you're doing the hunting or the farming, I love those analogies, by the way. What happens next?
Right. So you have candidates. Say you've boiled it down to 5 people that you want to interview. Now, I think the main takeaway here is don't just wing it. Sometimes principal and architecture owners will just say, oh, they'll pick up the phone and they'll chat with someone. Like, I think there should be more structure to it, more cadence, where, know what you're going to say, know what you need to understand and get out of this person, and see if there's a fit in terms of what you're looking for and what they offer. There's this one company, a friend and client, Andre Herrero of Charlotte Hyman Herrero. He asked every candidate that he meets with, what's your favorite chair? And I think that's a brilliant question. And having that sort of standardized question that is not only, it's personal, it's human. Like, you get an insight into their taste and their, what they're like outside of the office and what their passions are. I think that's a fantastic question to ask. But I think at the end of the day, you have to understand a candidate's motivation in that interview. and everyone's motivation is different. We talk to probably 20 candidates, architects, interior designers a day, and that's really what the conversations are about. It's like, what are you looking for? Is it salary? Is it, caliber of projects or work-life balance? Or, you want to go from an intermediate to a senior? Like, everyone's different. So I think in that conversation, you should understand what this candidate is looking for, and see if you are able to offer that. And a lot of times you can, especially if there is a fit in elsewhere. Like if they're looking for something that you can give, there might be a really good match there. I think one way of getting to the bottom of this is just asking, describe your ideal role. Like what does that role look like? And people will automatically envision what would make them happy. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want happy candidates, you want happy employees, a happy team. That is going to foster success for the studio. So, yeah, identifying that motivation is key. And yeah, that's kind of the interview part.
Yeah. It's remarkably similar to when you're meeting with a potential client, right? It's the same thing. You want to identify what those true motivations and needs are, because no one wakes up one day and decides they want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on a project. In the same way that no candidate wakes up one day and decides they just want a different job. Like it doesn't happen, right? There's a reason that they want a different job. What is the reason? They want a better culture. They want more money. They want more flexibility. Like what is the thing? So figuring out, the motivation behind it is brilliant. I'm curious because one of the most common challenges I hear around hiring is one, there's obviously the fear that it'll happen, but I think, it does still happen sometimes where you hire the wrong person, right? But you don't find out about it until, heck, it might happen on day 1 or it might happen on day 90, right? When they're in the job, and you just realize that it just wasn't a fit for, any series of reasons. And I'm curious what red flags you typically catch or are now like aware of that firms should keep in mind when they're speaking with potential candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes people are just good interviewers, and you got to do a good job separating the good interviewers from the good architects, good designers. There's a lot of ways to do that. I think what it really boils down to is doing your due diligence and taking the time. You've made it this far. You've got the house in order. You launched it, and you got candidates, and you interview people, and you found someone that you like fantastic. You're like 90% of the way there. You have to do that last 10% of doing your due diligence, and that comes in a lot of forms. I think that can be an AutoCAD test, a shadow day, a little side project that maybe you pay for, like a personality test. I see that a lot in actually San Francisco. A lot of clients will request a personality test, just to kind of see if that aligns with the studio. But also reference checks. That's a massive, massive aspect. It's a little tricky with candidates that are fully employed. I'd say 90% of the candidates that we work with and represent are gainfully employed. So it can be a little tricky to have very up-to-date references there, but it's an important, essential part of the process to have good references and have those checked out.
Yeah. I'm curious when you do all of these things. All right, so there's final checks. You're getting references. You're having some kind of test. Maybe there's a design exercise. Maybe there's a shadow day, and you decide you do want to formalize an offer. What does an attractive offer look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with understanding the different salary brackets. Of course, every market, every studio, every candidate is different, but there are general brackets available for reference. They're all over the web. Just from an entry level to a director, kind of what's the ballpark, the $10,000 ballpark of what this person should expect in salary. I think the main thing is don't lowball. Is like if you've made it this far, it's worth the extra bit of salary or flexibility or this or that. Where it's hard to find talent in this space, in this industry, and when you do, don't lose it, because it's not like sales or maybe where you can just post it and then, there's salespeople that do all kinds of
Another
things.
one will come by, you're saying. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Like this
There's
is,
more fish in the sea, yeah.
and you should have a very, healthy talent pool. So when you find someone that you like and they could be a great asset to your team, don't lose them. If it's an extra $5,000, it's going to be worth it. So that's sort of the first thing. Second thing, going back to their motivation and understanding, what does this person want? Is it that flexibility? Can you offer that flexibility? Is it salary? Can you offer that salary? Um, some of these things can be ironed out earlier in the interview process. But yeah, I think the main takeaway there is if you found someone that is a fit, present an offer that makes sense for them and makes sense for you.
Yeah. And what about I feel like, you can do all of that work, right? You do give them a good offer. It's a reasonable offer. You're not lowballing them. But there's, from my experience in sales, what I know, no matter what, every single push that always happens, no matter what, there is some kind of complication in every single deal, right? There's objections to overcome, there's negotiations to happen. And if you're not expecting that, it can be frustrating or jarring, or heck, you can even be offended, right? That they're trying to negotiate with something. What's your like? How do you typically see these things play out? What's the right thing to do in your experience? What's the wrong thing?
Well, generally, candidates are negotiating more than they did in the past. I'm not sure what that's a product of, but don't be surprised if a candidate counters. That is very common. Yeah, we do see sometimes offers will be rescinded, where if a candidate, now that was kind of back in the day and people that we don't work with as much, but that happens. And I think that's just not a great way of going about it. I think, like I said, finding someone that you really like and can see within your studio, like it's worth that extra bit across to get it across the finish line. But yeah, you see that all the time, especially, I mean, this is people's livelihoods. It is very important. It's something that they're going to be doing, 70% of the week. It is a sensitive, personal topic, and yeah, it gets a little sensitive from time to time. But I think the main thing is when there's a match, it's finding that match of like, okay, this candidate matches this studio. Like they align in terms of not only the hard like data points like location and work from home policy, but also just style and ethos and DNA and like, okay, this is a match. I think once you can find that, the rest is easily figured out because the rest, I mean, start date and bonuses and all of that like that. There's generally always some wiggle room there.
Yeah, but I think it's so important to remember, like what you said, this is their livelihood. And honestly, they should be the candidates, right? They should be selfish, right? You kind of like, I'd say that's even a signal that that's someone that cares, right? They're trying to protect themselves just like you're trying to, add benefit to your firm. And so it's just a natural thing, like to think that they want to get the best thing that they can, and hopefully they should. And I would consider that to probably be more often a good quality to have in a candidate, rather
Absolutely.
than a negative one.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and it goes back to the mindset thing. Is like if you're going to be working with the best candidates and the best designers in the market, like they're going to know that, and they're going to have options, and they're going to be worth that extra little bit. And if you just want to post a job and find someone that exactly falls into that job description at that salary, like it is an uphill battle. It is tricky to find, you know, someone. Okay, I need someone at $80,000 to do this one thing. That's it. Like that's a tricky find, and it's not.
Mm.
It's generally you're not going to find the best talent for that, as opposed to offering a little bit of flexibility. Finding someone that checks maybe 8 out of the 10 boxes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you've gotten your house in order. You've decided whether you're going to be a farmer or a hunter. what you're doing with the applications when they come through, how you're interviewing a lot more effectively and putting together an attractive offer, and you finally get the person that you want. How do you ensure that smooth transition and kind of a long-term success with this new person that you've just invested so much time and energy to get?
Right. I think the main thing is every client, not every client, a lot of clients will say, oh, I just need someone to come in and hit the ground running. And that's a little bit of a fallacy, and it's not it's not very realistic to think that a candidate is going to come in, know your systems, know your projects, know everything off the bat, and just hit the ground running. There is going to be a little bit of onboarding and a little bit of handholding there, but it's going to be worth it. So I think taking your time, being patient in that regard is going to pay off in the long run. Because sometimes, you'll see a candidate get hired and they just expect the world, they expect them to be, a senior at their studio within the first 3 weeks, but no, there takes a little bit of time to understand a new system. So just being patient there, working with them, having open lines of communication, and that goes a long way for retention too. Is like check in with your employees, check in with your candidates, understand, those motivations, and making sure that they're, in the right spot. Just having an open line of communication is so key. I think sometimes, you just don't want to blindside a candidate with this something that's been bubbling up in you for so long. Like have that conversation, have that correspondence. It's really going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah. It's also a good reminder, going back to having your house in order, like having a good and solid and clear onboarding process for new people can make a big difference. It reminds me of, I did actually work at Disney's architecture department as an intern when I was an undergrad. And it was part of this, like intern development program or blah, 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 whatever it was. But before you can even go into the office, there's like 2 days of classes, I guess you would call it, like that you go to learn about Disney. And I wasn't like a big Disney fan by any means. I had applied for the internship because my now wife, girlfriend at the time, now wife, had gotten an internship down there too. And I was like, oh, cool. I wonder if they have architecture. And they did. Anyways, ended up getting it. So I went into this not being like a giant Disney fan by any means. By the time I walked out of that 2-day session with them, learning about Disney and all that it does, I felt like I had like received a gift from God, right? Like this is the best, most amazing company I've ever worked at in my life. I can't believe I have the opportunity to work here. I am so excited to go into work. Like they had just instilled these like values into you that felt so incredible. And it was like, I was so thankful to be a part of something like that. Versus now I'm thinking back to when I started, after grad school, I got a job at a large, well-known international architecture firm. And I kid you not, like I came in, I remember I had to sit and wait for like 15 or 30 minutes or something like that before someone came to get me and take me to my desk. And there was no onboarding process. And it was literally like, yeah, we're, designing a skyscraper. And we're meeting in like an hour. So like put together some sketches and we can talk about them at the meeting. I was like, what? I've never designed a skyscraper in my life. I don't know how to do that on day one. Very jarring, very different experiences, right? But you kind of want somewhere in the middle there. You don't need a 2-day like class trying to get people pumped up to work there. But like this idea of instilling the values, getting someone excited, ready, to give you, the firm, the best version of themselves, right? Is also like another thing that happens after you actually hire someone. Like you still want to make sure that you're getting the best version of them and not just like the baseline version of them.
Right, the authentic, real them. And it goes back to that. Just onboarding is so key. It makes me think of my own hiring at our own agency. So we have about 4 recruiters with us, and I go out and hunt them. I go find them and bring them in, of course. But our onboarding is, we have over 100 clients, 30 of which are AD 100 studios. And we go through every single one of those clients and understand exactly who they are, what makes them unique, what is their angle, what is their pitch, You know, what kind of candidates do they want? And understanding that is so key, so that when a search comes in, my team already knows, like, okay, this is who this client is, this is who they want to see, uh, as opposed to just like, okay, you know, we need a senior architect for this studio in New York, go at it. Like, no, it's very structured, very systematic, and guidelines there so they know what they're doing. I think that translates just as much to architecture as well.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's one of the reasons that it's easy for people to keep coming back to work with you, right? They stay with you for long periods of time because of being so intentional and thoughtful with that. So if we go back to the main takeaways, because we've kind of run through this entire process right now, right? So one, you want to make sure that you're investing the right time and presenting yourself in the right way to attract the right people. That's one thing. What else? What else are the main takeaways from this idea of improving your hiring process?
Yeah, I think the mindset, investing in the team, it's worth it. That's sort of baseline first and foremost. You kind of, when it's time to search for talent, you got to come correct and have your house in order. Like, that's first thing. Second thing, be thoughtful, be considerate and strategic. Have a cadence to your process. Don't just wing it and hope for the best, because you're going to end up hiring again shortly. And then I mean, all these things, they take time, they take effort. And I know you say this in your correspondence as well. It's like you get out what you put in. So if you do the work, put in the time, put in the energy and the resources into finding talent, like, you're going to have a strong team. If you don't have that time, you could work with us.
There it is. Yes, if you don't have the time, the energy, or the capacity to take on that additional work, then Duke and your awesome four other recruiters, and kind of sounds like it's like an intimate. I mean, this was also another thing that I enjoyed working with you. It's not like you're not a giant 100-person recruiting agency, right? It's small, it's intimate. You get to work directly with you and the other recruiters in the agency to make sure that you understand your clients well. To your point, like all of them, but you have a personal relationship with all of them too.
Yeah, we try to kind of find that balance of scale, but also like a human aspect, that you're not just in a machine as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. The good news is that for everyone listening, right? Duke loves Growthitect, obviously. I mean, why couldn't he, right? They're amazing. And so if you mention Growthitect when you reach out to Duke, you will get 10% off your fee of working with him. And while I say that, I also want to mention that one of the other amazing things about Duke, and why I love to partner with Duke, is because you can review and interview candidates for free, right? You don't charge anything. It's not a per candidate charge that you do. Duke literally only charges a fee if you find the perfect hire and keep them for 60 days or something like that. I don't remember what it is, but
Right.
it's
Result-based commission, where there's no retainer fee, there's no initial fee to get a search started. The onus is on us to do our job well and bring us you that right talent.
That's right. So if you don't do your job well, you don't bring them good people, and they hire someone that doesn't work, then you don't get paid, right? So it's in Duke's best interest, very much so, to find you the perfect fit for that, and it's completely free for you to review and interview candidates and chat with Duke about what your needs are, which is amazing. I don't know if that's a common thing. I'm not big in the recruiting, but I haven't heard it from another recruiter. So I think that's awesome. So if you want to learn more, if you want to reach out to Duke, you can sign up at duketalent.io, right? And go and register as a company, fill that out. And when you do chat with Duke and his team, just make sure that you mention that you came over here from Growthitect, and they'll make sure that you get that 10% off from them. Duke, it's been incredible. What else do we need to know before we jump off? Anything else? What did I miss?
No, I'm just excited to be chatting with you, and yeah, thanks for hearing me out. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Duke.
Of course.